statue. I've already done one video on the Stoa of Aeolus and the Odeon of Agrippa, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about what I'll call the maternal archaic council complex, because it really is one of the most important sets of buildings in the classical Agora. The only problem is you can't really see it that clearly from here, but hopefully I'll be able to point out the general area where it is and you'll get a sense of it. If you can see it, and I'll zoom in, we actually have a pretty good almost bird's eye view of the structures. So you'll see now at the top of the screen there's the Hephaestion, the Temple of Hephaestus, and just below that, just above the trees, you might be able to see a round shape. Now that's the Tholos, that's the round building. And the buildings I'm going to be talking about actually include the Tholos, but they also are kind of above there, so sort of north of there. In the image it's kind of to the right and above it, including some of that more orangey red stuff, which is actually Hellenistic and Roman period matron, so shrine of the mother, which is sort of built on top of the classical stuff. In the archaic period we know that there's a shrine of the mother in this area. It's destroyed by the Persians in 480 when they sack Athens after the Athenians have evacuated Athens in order to risk everything on a naval confrontation in Salamis. It's not rebuilt after that. There's also a primitive, so-called the primitive bouleuterion, the archaic council building, which is used for the pre-Cleisthenic council. Very shadowy institution. We think it had 400 members associated with Solon. So the Solonian Council of 400 citizens, which functions throughout the 6th century BC. After Cleisthenes creates a new council of 500 citizens, another bouleuterion, a new bouleuterion is built, and this is the old bouleuterion, so-called, the headquarters of the 5th century Council of 500. And this building is kind of doing double duty because it's also sacred to the Mother of the Gods. So they don't rebuild the earlier shrine to the Mother, but they incorporate the cult of the Mother into the new bouleuterion, which is the old bouleuterion still, the 5th century bouleuterion. And this building has a statue of the Mother, which some people think was carved, sculpted by none other than Phidias. Phidias, who also, by the way, sculpted the chryselephantine, the golden ivory statue. Athena, up there in the Parthenon, also did the seated, the enthroned statue of Zeus at Olympia. So possibly there's a statue of the Mother in this old bouleuterion by Phidias. Finally, this building isn't just doing double duty, it's doing triple duty because it's also home of the state archives of Athens. Now you might think that this building has a bit too much to do, and because it's doing triple duty, and apparently the Athenians eventually thought that too. So around the end of the 5th century, a period when there's lots of constitutional changes, probably motivated by Athens losing the Peloponnesian War to Sparta. How could they lose the war to Sparta? Their system was so superior, so they must have thought, but maybe it needs some tweaks. Maybe, we should pay attention to these writers like Thucydides and Aristophanes who are critiquing the institution of the democracy. Maybe we should reform, so they do lots of reforms. I won't go into all the constitutional reforms, but it's a period when there's a lot of tumult, a lot of change, and so they build a new bouleuterion in this period. They build a new bouleuterion behind the old one, just to focus on being the home of the Council of 500, while the old bouleuterion is now handed over to be the state archives and to the worship of the Mother. So it's renamed the Matron, and the Matron, that building now does double duty. They call it the Matron, I guess, because they think, well, the worship of the Mother is the most important thing. The more important thing, but it's also the state archives. So how do they all fit into these buildings? Well, the old bouleuterion was about 23 meters square, and the new bouleuterion was a rectangle, so 16 meters by 22 meters. Not sure how they're organized inside, how the people were organized inside, the men, of course, all men. But most reconstructions have the councillors sitting on 3 sides of the building with an open space in the middle, opening onto a colonnaded courtyard. It's a very complicated area because they sort of built different buildings and they shifted things around over time, but you can start here. This is the pro-pylon to the new bouleuterion. So basically there's an old bouleuterion over here. There's also a primitive bouleuterion from the 6th century, but there's an old bouleuterion which is in the 5th century. The problem with that is that the old bouleuterion was also a shrine of the Mother and the state archives. So the turn of the 4th century, when there's lots of constitutional changes anyway, they sort of think, let's make a sort of dedicated council building, the new bouleuterion. And they actually put it behind the old one. They put it behind there. So this is actually the entrance, but it's not where the building is, so it's kind of tricky. So this is the propylon. You actually walk down there, and then you turn right at the back. And that's where the new bouleuterion was put. So you can kind of see it on the map as well. I'll zoom in. There's sort of pinky and orange area there. You can see if you go to that little square there, that's where we are facing, and you go down there and you go to the right, and you get to this building, the new bouleuterion. So over here was the old bouleuterion in theory, but you can't really see much of it because it's actually overlain by most of what you see here is the 2nd century BC matron, Shrine of the Mother, built much later in Hellenistic times. And that's a nice building, nice, very large building actually. Consists of various rooms, I think 4 rooms with a colonnade out front. All these rooms share a colonnade that faces east onto the Agora. And I'm told that if you go into the north room, you look into the north room in the colonnade, you can see some of the foundations of the primitive bouleuterion. So that would have been the one used in the 6th century for probably the Solonian Council of 400, if there was a Solonian Council of 400, which I guess there was, there probably was. So you can't see much of the 4th century matron or the old 5th century bouleuterion, as I say, since it's directly under this. But yeah, the new bouleuterion is still behind all this. But the one more thing I've seen, apparently you can see in this, in the remains, is if you go to the northwestern room, so the one, I guess, further away from the Acropolis, there are apparently some foundations of the archaic temple of the Mother, archaic shrine to the Mother. So I can't really go into it, but yeah, somewhere down there. Alright, so that's the maternal archive council area, and over there we have the Tholos.